Hi, everybody. First of all, a word of gratitude to all of our amazing sponsors. Without them, none of this would have ever happened. Welcome to Formulas and Life Hacks for the Everyday Admin. My name is Steve Molis, or if you're in the Trailblazer community, you might know me as SteveMo. Tell you a little bit about myself. A Salesforce MVP. I was part of the inaugural class in 2010, and I recently got inducted into the Hall of Fame. I'm a Trailhead Ranger, finally, got that 100th badge. I also flunked out of community college, or as we call it in the United States, daycare for 18 to 24-year-olds. And I'm a self-taught Salesforce admin. I've been with the same company for 30 years, and one day in 2003, my boss announced that our sales team was getting this thing called Salesforce, and he pointed at me and said, "You can take it." And I'm also a world's record holder. I hold the world's record for the most times a speaker at Dreamforce has said "fuck" during their presentation. The previous record was 0, held by every other speaker before me or since. But with that in mind, Salesforce has told me that whenever I speak, I need to have my own safe harbor slide. So let's talk about the F word, formulas. So this is called Formulas for the Everyday Admin. And it's a bunch of formulas that I've written either in my own org or answering questions in the Trailblazer community that I want to share with you. The first one I want to share with you is this one. This is hands down the most complex formula I've ever written. Somebody in the Answers community needed to calculate the percentage of business days remaining in the current month so that they could do prorated invoicing. And this is the formula I built for them. Hands down the most complicated formula I've ever written. I couldn't believe it worked. I couldn't believe I got it under what was then the 5K compile size limit. And next to it is that's not fake. That is a Victorinox Swiss Champ XVAT pocket knife. It's got 84 blades. It weighs almost 1 pound, and it costs about 500 euros. And the formulas I'm going to share with you are not like that. How many people need a pocket knife that's got 84 blades? How many people have 500 euros to drop on a pocket knife? How many people want to lug around a pocket knife that weighs nearly a pound in their pocket? The formulas I'm going to show you are like this pocket knife. This is my favorite pocket knife. It opens bottles of beer and opens bottles of wine. And I use it every single day because I'm a Salesforce admin. I'm going to show you how to use a test validation rule logic using a checkbox formula, using basic math to simplify some otherwise complex formulas, how to write a formula that will retrieve the ultimate parent account in a multiple level account hierarchy for really nice, clean reports and dashboards, and what I consider to be the greatest formula ever written, wasn't written by me. Show of hands, how many people consider themselves formula novices or have never even written a formula before? Okay, so this is the formula editor, and there's formulas are pervasive throughout Salesforce. You can create a formula field, a validation rule. You can use a formula for a case assignment, lead assignment rules. They're in Flow Builder now. They're in Report Builder. And the formula editors look a little bit different depending on which one you're in, but they share a lot of the same features. And they've got these buttons on them. And I use these buttons every day. I've written literally thousands of formulas. The first one I want to call out is the insert field button. This is very important if you're just getting into formulas. When you write a formula, you need to use what's called the API field name. And that's not always going to be what you see when you're looking at a record on a screen. Perfect example of that is opportunity stage. The API field name is not stage. It's not opportunity stage. It's stage name with a capital S, a capital N, and no blank space in between them. And that's what you need to do when you're writing a formula. The insert field button gives you that all the time. And when you select it, it even has a little pop-up that shows you what data type it is. Is it date? Is it date time? Is it a pick list? Is it a multi-select pick list? All those things matter when you're writing a formula. Another one is the insert function button. When you scroll through that list of functions in that menu, the pop-up actually updates to show you a syntactically correct representation of how you write that function with a link to the online help and training for all the functions, fully written out. When you can use them, when you can't use them, what they do, how you write them, all that information is right there. Another one, when you click the insert field button, you'll notice these things with dollar signs. Those are called global variables, and those represent the person who is logged in at that moment doing that thing, whatever that thing is. looking at a record, creating a record, editing a record, and you can use them in validation rules. They're very valuable. You can call in the user, the user's profile, their role. One thing though, don't use their user ID, their profile ID, or their the record type ID, or their role ID, because every time you do, God kills a baby seal. Please, 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 whenever possible, use their username, the profile name, the record type name, the role name. Users can't change any of those things to override or circumvent your formula. So the first one I want to show you is a little trick I came up with in my own org. A little backstory on this one. I had to make an update to an existing validation rule on the opportunity object, and it was already one of the most complex validation rules we had. And this change involved an or clause, and those are always tricky. And let's face it, opportunities are probably the golden child of all Salesforce objects. I mean, I tell people, you could do something that fucks up activities, and people might not notice for hours, days, weeks, ever. You do something that screws up the opportunity object, the opportunity records, and before your finger comes off that mouse, your phone is ringing off the hook and your inbox is filling up with angry messages. What did you do to my sales pipeline? Why can't I close this deal and make my quota? What's this error message I'm getting? So I had to make a change to something that touched opportunities, and I consider myself pretty good at writing formulas, but even this one gave me pause. It was really tricky. And I remember from, even though I flunked out of community college, from basic algebra, that A plus B divided by C and A plus B divided by C, while they're both syntactically correct, the logic is different, and they're going to return different and potentially bad results. But in the formula editor, there's a check syntax button, but no check logic button. And I knew that my syntax was sound, but I was really worried about my logic. And I thought about it. Then I realized that when you're writing a validation rule, you're really writing a test for what is bad. It's almost like a medical test. A positive result means the record meets the criteria for what's bad, and it blocks the user from saving it. Much like a medical test or a validation rule, a checkbox is also Boolean. It's either true or it's false. It's a 1 or a 0. Wax on, wax off. So the solution I came up with was I created a formula field on the opportunity object. Only I could see it. I selected checkbox as my formula result, and then I put my updated validation rule formula in it. So suppose I had like a real simple validation rule. I'm not going to bore you with that beast that I had to update. Suppose I had a pick list field on my records. Do you owe SteveMo a beer? And I want to make sure that people don't leave this thing blank. So I write a simple validation rule like this. Is blank text, do you owe SteveMo a beer? Users can't save the record if they leave it blank. But I certainly don't owe myself a beer, so I want to exempt myself from that rule. So I check to see if the owner of the record has my username. I'm exempt. But I've got some buddies who don't owe me a beer. The Three Stooges, the dude from the Big Lebowski, I want to exempt them from this rule. So I add an or clause, and I add all the exempt users to my validation rule. Now this is syntactically correct, but is my logic sound? So before I deploy this validation rule, I put it into my formula checkbox field. I click the check syntax button to validate that, yes, my syntax is correct, but is the logic sound? So I create a list view or a report that shows all the fields my formula is evaluating side by side, and I can see that I've got a problem. My record has a checkbox next to it. That means that my record fails the validation rule. The dude's record has a checkbox next to it. The dude should be exempt. Mo, Larry, Curly, and Shemp should be exempt, but we've got checkboxes on our records. We are failing this validation rule even though we should be exempt. Does anybody want to take a guess what the logic flaw in my formula is? Winner, winner, chicken dinner. I have a prize for you. From Dreamforce 14, I have a SteveMo Safe harbor drinking game luggage tag, the only swag I have. That's right. When I put all my exemptions inside of an or clause, I doomed all of us to a loop that we can never escape. Because while I'm exempt from the validation rule, I fail it because my username is SteveMo. My username is not Mo Howard. My username is not Curly, Shemp, or the dude. And the dude is trapped in that loop because while his username is exempt, his is not me, Mo, Larry, Curly. So, I mean, a user can only have one username, one user profile, one user ID, unless the user is Schrodinger's cat, in which case all bets are off. So to fix this, I remove my or clause, wrap everything in a single and clause. If the do you owe me your beer field is blank, and the user is not me, and the user is not Mo, and the user is not Larry, Curly, Shemp, and the dude, the user can't save the record, but the six of us are exempt. So I go back to my formula checkbox field, put my updated formula into it, check my syntax again. Also, little word of advice, if you're ever using the is blank function in a formula, make sure you select, how to treat blank fields. Either treat them as a blank or treat them as a zero, depending on whether you're doing math or not. Very important with the blank function. But now I go to my list view, and now I can see that the only people who have a checkbox are the ones who should have a checkbox. Non-exempt users who have left the field blank. Simple little hack. And you only need one of these formula checkbox fields. Once I did this, I created this formula, this validation test checkbox on every single object that I have a validation rule. But you only need one of them on the object because I just use it or reuse it whenever I'm adding a new validation rule or making an update to an existing validation rule. You don't need one of these for every validation rule you have in your org. It's just a reusable. And the cool thing about it is I built it for that, just my own sanity. But then I realized when I'm about to make a change to a validation rule or add a new validation rule, I can run a report ahead of time and see how many bad records we have for when this validation rule goes live. And I can give the head of sales a heads up. Just so you know, Monday, your team, 25% of their sales pipeline is non-compliant as of Monday. So clear out some time in your calendar. You're probably going to have a lot of calls and emails from your users. Why can't I close this deal? So it's got a number of different uses. Now, a word of advice, it is a formula field, not a validation rule. And not every function that you can use in a real validation rule is available in a formula field. You can't use is new, is changed, prior value, regex, VLOOKUP. So now, if your formula doesn't have any of them, you can literally just put your formula in the checkbox field, validate it, and then copy it, put it into production. But if it does have one of those functions, you'll have to comment it out or redact them from the checkbox. You'll be able to test the rest of your formula, but you can't actually, they're not even available in the insert function palette when you're building a formula field. So just one thing to keep in mind. Next, I want to show you how to simplify some pretty complex formulas using, by turning them into a basic math problem. And this one comes from a question that was posted in the Salesforce Trailblazer community back in 2011 by a guy named Bart Ward. And Bart was trying to create a validation rule that would prevent users from moving the opportunity stage backwards. See, for Bart, his company's stages were like milestones. A deal could only go from cultivation to proposal to contract negotiation to its inevitable closure as a win or a loss. A deal could never go backwards from proposal back to cultivation or prospect or any of that. It can only move forward. And so Bart actually posted his first attempt at writing that validation rule. And Bart had 16 stages in his sales process. And he was using a function called isPickVal. Now, isPickVal is a perfectly good function, been around forever. Its purpose is to evaluate a pickless field, look for a value that you provide, and then perform an action or return a result that you also provide. But it's not the most efficient function. It's kind of like having an Alexa and having to ask Alexa over and over. Alexa, there's zombies outside? Okay, run. Alexa, is it hot outside? Okay, let's go to the beach. Alexa, is it raining outside? Okay, bring an umbrella. Alexa, is it warm outside? Okay, let's go for a hike. I figured it out. In order to cover every possible combination of previous stage and current stage using is-pick-val, Bot would need to write over 150 if-is-pick-vals in his validation rule. I guarantee that Bot would have either hit the compile size limit, hit the character limit, or died of carpal tunnel syndrome before he got done writing that thing. So there's another function out there that behaves a lot like is-pick-val, but it's much more efficient and it's also much more flexible, and it's called case. Case, first of all, it's not just limited to pick list fields. You can use it on text, date, number. It's way more flexible than is-pick-val, but can also work on a pick list field without having to be converted. And with case, you make a single call to the field. You bring the entire list of values you're looking for, the entire list of results you want to return or actions you want to perform. So it's like asking your Alexa, what's it like outside? So I don't think you guys want to look at like 4-point font for the rest of the presentation. So I simplified Bot's formula. I don't have 16 opportunity stages. Let's just stick to 7. So as an admin, I have access to the opportunity stage pick list value set. I just copy and paste all those values out of the pick list menu. And then I open a case statement. I insert the stage name field. I paste in all the stages from first to last, put single quotes around them. Another thing about if you're just getting started with formulas, you need to use straight quotes. You can use single or double, but they got to be straight quotes. If you're using a word processor that does the curly quotes, the formula editor will give you a syntax error, but it won't even tell you what the error is. It just can't process them. So using case, I'm taking my first opportunity stage and I'm turning it to a 1. I take my second stage and I turn it into a 2. I just go from first to last, assigning a numeric value. Now I made closed won and closed lost both equal to 6 because they're the last stage in the sales process. I'm just using case to turn words or pick list values into numbers. Then I took the case statement that I wrote and copied and pasted that into the same formula. But in my second case statement, I wrapped a prior value function around the stage name. The case statement is retrieving the previous value that was in that stage field and turning that into a number from 1 to 6. And then in between my first case statement for the current stage and my second case statement for the previous stage, I inserted a less than mathematic operator. This is my complete formula. I'm just turning the current stage into a number from 1 to 6 and the previous stage into a number from 1 to 6. I may have flunked out of community college, but even I know that the number 1 is less than the numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5, and the number 2 is less than the number 3, 4, 5, and 6. That's all I'm doing. If the deal previously was in proposal, which is the number 4, and they try to move it back to value proposition, which is the number 3, needs analysis, which is the number 2, qualification, which is the number 1, they're blocked from saving the record. They can only save it at the current stage or move it on to the next one. And I posted that for Bot in 2011. That question is still out there. There are over 200 follow-up posts on that original post because people see that and they say, I've got a slightly different sales process. We actually do need the user to be able to slide back to the previous stage sometimes. Simple. You make your first 2 stages equal to the number 1. You make your next 2 stages equal to the number 2. You make your next 2 stages. So maybe you go from proposal in process to proposal submitting, but they reject the proposal. So you got to redo the proposal. Fine. You can go back to proposal in process, but you can't go back to qualification or prospect. You can go to negotiation and maybe the negotiations go south and you got to redo the quote. Fine, you can slip back to quote, but you can't go all the way back to needs analysis and qualification. I'm just same basic math. Another one, this one is really cool. Same question. Years later, 10 years later, somebody said, I not only need to prevent them from going backwards, I need to prevent them from skipping over stages. I've begged my boss to let me actually deploy this in my own org, but I keep getting shot down because we have what I call the Christmas miracle deal. Person creates the deal, sits there in cultivation for months and months. Then they realize, oh crap, if I'm going to get my commission check, I got to close this thing out. And it just leapfrogs from cultivation to closed won. So here's what I did. Now, first thing I did, I added an exemption for closed lost, because the reality is a deal can be lost at any stage. And I want the user to be able to go straight from that stage to closed lost, because if I force them to go through every single stage one by one just to close it out as a loss, I will have obliterated all my precious opportunity stage history data. And so I'll never be able to run an accurate report that shows where we truly lost a deal, because it will look like every deal was lost at negotiation. So to preserve that, I allow users to go straight to closed lost from any stage. Then I kept my case statement as is and my prior value case statement as is, but I changed my mathematical operator from a less than to a not equals. And at the end of my prior value, I just added +1. If they're changing the opportunity stage and they're not changing it to closed lost, they cannot change it to a stage that is less than the current stage or more than the current stage +1, all by turning words into numbers using the case function. Simple, basic math. And I see similar questions get asked all the time. I'll see people post questions like this where they've got a field like, opportunity amount greater than or equal to $50,000. If it's not approved, they can't move it to proposal. That's great. That's perfectly sound if you have a validation rule that blocks them from advancing to the next stage. But if you don't, and you've got other stages after proposal, there is nothing in that formula to prevent someone from just skipping right over proposal and moving an unapproved deal worth $50,000 or more to price quote, contract, or closed won. So the way I would approach that is I would use what I learned from writing Bart's formula back in 2011. If the deal is worth $50,000 or more and it's not approved, I'm turning all the stages from 1 to 7, and if it's greater than or equal to the number 4, they can't save the deal until they get approval. Now, you don't have to write it like this. If all you care about is the 4 stages, you can just turn them into 1. You don't have to do 1 to 7 or whatever. You can just make the ones that are required a 1 and just say equals 1. If the deal is worth $50,000 or more, it's not approved, and the stage is one of these 4, they can't save the record. Again, it's just using case to turn pick list values from words into numbers, and then it becomes a basic math problem. So this next one, this one I did in my own org. In my org, we have account hierarchies. Anybody else use the parent account lookup field on the account object? So you've got this account hierarchy. It's got 2 levels, 3 levels, 4 levels or more. And then one day your boss asks you to write opportunity report grouped by the parent account so you can see how much money is in each corporate hierarchy. And then you get this. Octane is the parent of Lego, United Oil and Gas. United Oil and Gas is the parent of United Oil and Gas Singapore, UK, and US. Lego is the parent of Pyramid Construction. But all the Octane revenue is scattered all over this report. And I've got a saying. If you build a report and the person looking at that report needs to pull out a piece of paper and a calculator to figure out what that report is saying, you built a shitty report. And I don't want to be known as the guy who builds shitty reports. So maybe you add a chart to help make sense of it. That's great if your boss has a calculator that's got a red, green, orange, yellow, and blue button on it. So, and I had this problem in my own org. And I was like, how do I solve this? Because, I did some digging around and I found that our highest account hierarchy had 4 tiers. And I was like, maybe I could build a formula to solve this. But, the thing is, I don't know if the account is the top account in the hierarchy, the bottom account in the hierarchy, the second or third account in the hierarchy, Or if there's no hierarchy, maybe it's just a standalone company. And then the solution came from a guy named Deepak Anand, who in my opinion is the greatest contributor in the history of the Trailblaze community. And it wasn't in really a solution he came up with. It was in his explanation of how he solved it. He solved somebody's question using a function called blank value. And blank value has been around forever. And I would see it when I would be building a formula, and I'd see the blank value function. I'd even stop and look at it sometime. I could never figure out like how I could actually use it. And it was in Deepak's explanation using the blank value to solve someone else's problem that I realized what it actually did and how I could leverage it in this situation. I created, I'll try to give it justice, but what blank value does, you point it at a field, and if the field is populated, Salesforce just pulls in whatever value is in that field. But if the field is blank, blank value allows you to provide a substitute to use instead. You can either put a hard-coded value, or you can point it at another field. Like if you were doing math, there's a thing called a divide by zero error. You cannot use a zero as your divisor. It breaks the laws of math. You'll actually see pound error in your formula result. But you don't know if the field is populated with a positive number or a zero, or if the field is blank. Blank value would allow you to add a substitute if the field is blank or zero. So I created a formula field on the account object. I selected text as my result type. And then I used the insert field button, and I went to the parent account lookup field on the account object. And you'll notice that it's got a caret next to it. That means it's a lookup field. And with the insert field button, you can step through that lookup field. Now I'm in the account that is the parent of that account. And I scrolled through that list of fields, and I found the parent account lookup field on that account. And I stepped through that parent account field. I kept on clicking up and up and up and up. So I did some homework. I found that my highest account hierarchy was 4 levels, but I wanted to build a buffer. So I went up 6 levels. I kept on going up, 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 6 levels, and retrieved the parent account name. But I don't know if when I go up 6 levels, if there's actually going to be anything there, because I might be already sitting on the top account, or I might be on the bottom account, or I might be on a middle account, or there might be no hierarchy at all. So I wrap this in a blank value function. If I go up 6 levels and I find nothing, I go to my substitute. I go up 5 levels to the parent account, and I retrieve that account name. But I might go up 5 levels, and I might also find nothing. So I wrap that in a blank value, and I go up 4 levels, and I wrap that in a blank value, and I go up 3 levels, and I go up, wrap that in a blank value, I go up 2 levels, and I wrap that in a blank value, and I go up 1 level. And if I've gone up 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 levels and still have not found any account name, then that means that I'm either on the top account in the hierarchy, or there is no hierarchy at all. In either case, just give me the name of the account that I'm sitting on. And then I close the whole thing out with a bunch of right parens. These are all nested within each other. And the cool thing about formula fields, or any custom field really, is the second you hit save, that field is now available in nearly every single report type that supports that object, including every single existing report that you've already written. This is the same report that I started with. I simply grab my newly created ultimate parent account field, and I swap that with the standard parent account field as my top report grouping. This is the same report. Without a piece of paper and a pencil or a calculator, my boss can tell that there is $6.9 million worth of revenue in the Octane Corporation hierarchy. And there is $2.1 million in the Warnham Hogg Dunder Mifflin account hierarchy. And my 3 standalone accounts, Three Stooges, Initech, Midstate Office Supply, they're not out in this island of misfit toys with a blank parent account because they don't have a parent account. The ultimate parent account shows their name. So now my reports and charts look like this. All the Octane in one nice, neat stack. All of Warnham Hogg in one nice, neat stack. My 3 standalone accounts, Three Stooges, Initech, Midstate Office Supply, no longer in a nameless, faceless report column. And it's all just using a nested blank value that I learned from Deepak Anand. And the cool thing, I wrote that thing years ago, and it just returned a text string of the account name. Along comes Flow Builder. I was like, wait a minute. I could use this to give my users a direct lookup to the top account in the account hierarchy directly from the account page. So using Flow Builder, I built a simple flow. Gets triggered anytime a new account is created or an existing account is updated. And it's just a simple field update. The same exact formula. The only thing I had to change was the syntax, because in Flow Builder, your formula uses curly braces, exclamation point, $sign, record name instead of the, that's all I had to change was the API field name. And I got that from the insert field button in the Flow formula editor. I didn't have to rewrite that manually. And I just took something I wrote years ago and used it, and same formula 10 years later. Let me see how we're doing on time. Oh, good. Okay, and so without further ado, what I consider to be the greatest formula ever written, not written by me. A lot of people attribute this formula to me. I learned it from a guy named Tom Tobin, who was an analytics product manager at Salesforce back at my first Dreamforce in 2009. Tom was leading a hands-on analytics workshop, and he showed this formula, and my jaw hit the floor. So I tell people, and the formula is called the power of one. And I tell people, a lot of people attribute it to me. I tell people that I'm just Tom's humble apostle spreading the gospel of the power of one. So it's a formula field. I have this field on every single object in my org. When I create a new custom object, it's the first field I add to that object. So you select formula as the data type, number is the result type, 0 decimals. You don't need any decimals. It's a whole number. And just one word of advice. Don't name the field power of one. People have emailed me and sent me messages in the Trailblazer community saying, I'm using that power of one thing that you brag about, and I can't make sense of my report results. And I was like, can you send me a screenshot of the report? And they've got 5 power of one fields. They're all called power of one. I'm like, I mean, it's your org. You can do whatever you want. Like, the box of George Foreman, he named all his kids George. You can do that. It's your org. Personally, I name my power one fields after the object that I'm creating them on, because that's how I'm going to use them. So you select formula as your data type, number as your result type, and that's your formula. Nope. That's really your formula. You open the formula editor and you type in the number 1 and you hit save. So what's so cool about it? It's a 1. Here's what's so cool about it. The moment you hit save, no matter how old your org is, no matter how many hundreds, thousands, millions, bazillions of records for that object your org has, every single one of them now has a 1 in that field. And from now until the stars burn out in the sky, every single record that gets created in your org will have a 1 in it. So what's the big deal? Like, you create the power 1 field on an opportunity, you look at an opportunity record, there's a 1 looking back at you. Like, what's so cool about that? Also, you don't have to put the field on the page layout. It really has no value at the record level. Here's what's so cool about it. This is a plain vanilla, off-the-shelf Salesforce Opportunities with Products report. Using the standard record count feature in the report builder, I can see that this report has 1,251 records. But 1,251 of what? Users who own an opportunity? Okay, I flunked out of community college, but I think I can count to 6. Accounts that have an opportunity? Opportunities? Opportunity products? Products? Your guess is as good as mine. The only way to know for sure is because thankfully this has less than 2,000 rows. You can hit show details. Take your phone off the hook, cancel all your meetings for the rest of the day, click show details, and count them row by row and hope you don't get distracted, lose count, or die of carpal tunnel syndrome. This is the same report After I created my Power of One field on the user object, the account object, the opportunity product object, the product object, same report, my Power of One fields are all there for the picking in the field menu. I simply grab my user Power of One field from the opportunity owner, drag it into the report, select summarize sum. I grab my account Power of One field, drag it into the report, select summarize sum. I grab my opportunity Power of One field, drag it into the report, select summarize sum. I grab my opportunity product Power of One field, drag it into the report, select summarize sum. This is the same report we started with. I can confirm that yes, even community college dropout, Steve Molis can count to 6. There are 6 users who own an opportunity in this report. There are 41 accounts that have an opportunity in this report. There are 1,067 opportunities in this report. And there are 315 opportunity products. And I did all that using a number 1. And that's why it is the greatest formula ever written, not by me. Thank you. We've got like 10 minutes, and if we run out of time, if anybody has, I'll be around all day. If I'm pretty easy to spot. If you want to sit down and show me stuff in your own org you're wrestling with, or talk about any of this, but if we've got a couple of minutes, I guess, for Q&A if anybody has a question. Anyone? Sure.
I think I would say that, well, I'm just starting to get a Salesforce admin, and it's just really impressive how you can kind of step back from the problem, and considering that you have so much experience, what would you suggest?
That's a really, so for the one for Bot, I really had to step back myself. He posted his first attempt at that formula. I went down the very same road. I started with if is pick val, but it was like, I think when I got to my 30th or 40th one, I was like, this is gonna kill me. I realized, I was like, I don't think I've covered 2% of all the possible combinations. I actually, and I've done this myself using, I had to do an approval process entry criteria using formulas. And what I ended up doing was, rather than getting bogged down in the minutia of writing, I stepped back and I actually just opened a spreadsheet because I needed, before I wrote anything, I had to calculate how many permutations I had to cover. So my approval process, it was like 4 product bundles, and based on the product selected, that would determine who needed to sign off on the deal. And I had to cover all those possible permutations. It could just have product A, product B, product C, product D, or A and B, A and C, A and D. And so rather than I used to start by just write. I would just get in writing mode. But then it's like, I could write. And then I get to the end and I'm like, I'm in a loop. This formula is completely useless. And I've wasted hours and keystrokes, precious keystrokes, writing a worthless formula. Sometimes I get out of it and we'll just put it in an Excel spreadsheet and just use A, B, C, D and just write out, okay, how many, it ended up being 32 permutations that I had to cover. And then I was able to write one and then sometimes, not always, you're not going to be as lucky, but sometimes when you do it that way, it's like, okay, actually I can just copy and paste the one I've written and change this value, and that's my second, my second permutation. And then you copy. Sometimes you'll luck out, but you do have to step back sometimes. And I don't always know when to. I lucked out with Bot. I got 30 in, and I was like, this is going bad. This is not going to work out. But good question.